Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from blessed Ubud, Bali, June 18th, 2023. And thank you for being here. This is the World Dharma Public Forum, opportunity for others around the world and here in person, and myself included, to, what's the purpose? I use the word commune a lot. It's more intimate to me than communication. And maybe you're with me, I don't know, hang in there, maybe you're with me. This thing of using our mind, consciousness, this invisible, intersecting, I want to use the word tapestry, kind of a homogenized word to talk about what the Buddha was said to have said, samsara, this intersecting madness of rapturous bliss, rare, basic human decency occasionally, unthinkable galactic craziness to think that there's multiple extinctions going on in our cosmos, our knowable cosmos, simultaneously to this conversation that we're having, is way beyond existential. But communication, this phenomena of using consciousness and learned language, and the DNA, if you will, the DNA and the pre-DNA of these intersecting intelligences that we inherit unoptionally based upon conception and embryonic life. We come into this world with these conditions, these proclivities, and these immeasurably intersecting intelligences. I'm not putting a moral judgment on the word intelligence. Stay with me, please. But these defining, we call it in Buddhism, dhammas, these lawful, discernible physics of being, consciousness. And learning how to communicate as a human being in our cultural conditioning, in our language base, in our parental influences, each of us being shaped by mother and father and circumstance and food and diet and lack of nutritions and communism and Buddhism and socialism and Stalinism and Hitlerism and all the various ways in which we're conditioned by conditions, by conditions, by conditions. This infinite intersecting world of conditions the Buddha talked about as samsara. And it really appeals to me to bring the word D-H-A-M-M-A into the word samsara, because it speaks to nature, the nature of reality. That's a big phrase, but to learn how to navigate the lawfulness of interbeing, to use a Thich Nhat Hanh phrase, contextual intelligence and how to navigate that. That is a vocation that's very rare. I call it the vocation of consciousness and context. I call it world dharma. And to me, I can't get enough of that. Why? Why? Maybe you're with me. It's because inevitably we're inbuilt with the nervous system, and we're forced to feel. Forced to feel, FTF, forced to fucking feel. Now, if I'm being tortured right now, I use the word fucking mildly to talk about unthinkable anguish. And equally okay, you always got to speak about this thing because it tortures people's mind to think about torture. That there's moments where there's kindness and bliss and tenderness and sensuality, and that's the juxtaposition of this maddening miracle called samsara. It has these ultimate dualities called infinite spectrum. Infinite spectrum of duality. And to me, to learn the lawfulness of this context, what operates and how to operate within this samsaric tapestry, that is the vocation of what I call the Dhamma savant. the Dharma savant, someone who's turning a corner on my little preferential ideology that feels good at the moment. Fuck you. You know, anyone's got a religion and an ism and a psychology and blah, 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 blah. Today, we have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. There's so much. If you were in Ubud for 1 minute, it'd be hard to know what you're talking about based upon the conditions of our own upbringing, our spiritual preferences, our psychological preferences, all the things that we call our reality, my reality. Now, point one of this little bit of opening context rant is, okay, how to fucking make sense of it, to me, is the issue. Okay, you've got loot, you've got your Bitcoin, you've got your Ethereum, although it's tanking, although BlackRock put a lot of money into it recently. Okay, everyone's watching how to make loot. Then you've got love that's either happening or it happened wrongly or you hope to happen better than the way it's been happening. So you've got these proclivities that you're inbuilt with to have to navigate. Sleep, food, cleanliness, social interaction. It's very hard to be a nun or a monk that's renounced the world and doesn't talk. You end up talking to your body, your mind, your identity. Believe me, I was a monk briefly for 3.5, almost 4 years. You don't just shut the conversation off any more than you just shut fucking masturbation off, although you don't touch your genitals. Sexuality is deeply inbuilt. It's not wrong. It's just that you've chosen a vocation temporarily to see it in light of abstinence. And so seeing context clearly, that is a very rare individual. I want to understand my context like a map. I want to go from here to there. I want to get there properly, skillfully, in one piece. Just as you would be in a freeway, driving a car, navigating in an urban setting. You want to get from A through C to D to Z successfully to be at the party on time. That's called an interest in Dhamma reality. Dharma reality, rather than my proclivity towards, you know, living within the instincts of my conditioning. And these biases. Now just pause for a minute halfway through. Just look at the last 3 years and look at the information that's coming out, that's been out there all along. I'm sorry to tell you people, as you know as well as I do, the information has been out there all along. However, the information now is unmistakably out there, and people have turned their wrong views into right views about the efficacy of a fucking thing called a gene therapy that really turned out to be somewhat disastrous for a vast majority of people, and it's getting worse, okay? I don't want to say too much more about that. However, we got it wrong. Some got it wrong. You can get it wrong about living. Okay, what? You can really get it wrong to the point where we may have gotten it so wrong that we're so preoccupied with our own personal dilemmas that the global elites, the Silicon elites, the Davos elites, the governmental elites are inflicting digital, fascistic, totalitarian, authoritarian demands on our mind, on our body, on our lifestyle, to the point where I'm hearing among many people, you can't even withdraw money in certain places today. We hear about digital passes. We hear about mandatory vaccine QR codes through the WHO and the evil man Tedros and the people who will be taking over this authoritarian body called lockdown on our terms. Okay, guess what? The war is on. The brown shirts have to be seen in our own mind and how to purge ourselves from misinformation about the lawfulness of existence. There may not be an existence. Look at AI today. They're allowing us to have of this incredible access to intelligence. At the same time, all these people who've created it and are researching it and are profiting on it are sounding a global alarm. Guess what? We may be annihilating life as we know it. And it's like, so, I dare use the word, a clusterfuck of information today. It's hard to make sense, except you want to really take control of what you've got while you still have it, is consciousness. And to me, that comes right back to Dhamma. Use the word Dharma. Use the cognitive infrastructure of consciousness. Use any word you need to. How to get lawfulness of interbeing, consciousness in context, right. Why? Pause. I don't know about you, but I've gotten it wrong a lot of the time, and the suffering is over the top. Countries get it wrong. My country of Burma today is undergoing a democracy, a genocide of democracy. People I know being beheaded, killed, tortured, raped as we speak. The government has gone off the rails. They have weaponized everything against the people. People are now criminals in their own country. You speak up for truth, you're a villain. And they call it democracy. They use that word, a democracy, for the betterment of you while they incarcerate, they kill, and they rape. The perversity has gone satanic. And it could very well be that if we don't really rise up right now and look at the nature of consciousness and what we can do in the revolution to turn back these forces, we're over. So today's talk, the last third of it, is a very, very important discourse attributed to the Buddha. How to fucking know how to protect your mind. How and what is spiritual self-defense so that you can shed off unwarranted, unneeded ideas about transformation. And I know everyone's got to learn the hard way, but why bother when you can learn the beautiful way, the easy way that really tends to the garden of consciousness in terms of what's beautiful, what's good, and what's true, these timeless qualities of basic human sacredness. It's said way back in the day with the Buddha, there was a group of people, could have been early day Ubud, where there were so many thought leaders coming through town that they were confused about who to believe. And so the head of the village went to the Buddha, was supposedly someone who understood how to understand truth from lies, propaganda from fact, all those various dichotomies that we've been forced to examine now the last 3 years, and for those who paid attention throughout history, to the rise of dictatorship and totalitarianism, the psychology. How do you understand what to trust in your own mind? And the head asked the Buddha, said, listen, you know, you're someone who's attributed to understand how to discern, critically think, truth from falsehood. How do we understand that mechanism in our own mind? And the Buddha was said to have said that you have every right to doubt. Doubt is a high virtue. Skillful ethical doubt is a remarkably high virtue. I pause here as I come to the end of this opening. Very few people can identify as they can colors on a palette. Perhaps if you're a musician or a singer, notes on a piece of paper, or notes on your ear, or even just words on your consciousness that you discern as words that we take for granted. The word art could mean something different for 1,000 people, and it probably does. The word truth could mean something, yes, we agree upon the definition. But what does ethical doubt mean? How do you identify that color on the palette of your own consciousness to protect you from misinformation, false beliefs, cognitive bias, the lack of critical thinking, the trust in an instinctual joy in the mind, when in fact that joy is a toxic habitual joy that only leads you down a false road called yet another sacred cow that's an addiction rather than a release. And so critical thinking, rational consideration, deep inquiry, even the word mindfulness is up for debate. What does it really mean to be mindfully present in a discerning, critically thinking, felt deeper than embodied way, to trust the validity of a perception to be actually A, not B, a C, not an F, a truth, not a lie. Pause. I don't know where I picked this up, but it's true. There was a study that was done way back in the day at a fake institute called the Albert Einstein University. And these psychologists and psychiatrists wanted to do a study on how well could someone understand the truth when we were deliberately telling lies. And so they concocted this genius social experiment of taking a master orator, a sitcom professional, a TV star, and training him in the art of non sequiturs and in doublespeak and in poetic, romantic, charming, eloquent storytelling, smiling through mannerism, seductive language. You know, those kind of yoga teachers and psychotherapists and shamans that you've always met. And wow, what a cool experiment. And so they trained this man in some of these techniques, and he was already an actor, a seasoned pro. And they said, okay, we're going to bring together some of the leading intellectuals in Southern California, psychiatrists, PhDs, and clinical psychologists making a lot of loot on knowing consciousness in the minds of self and other. We want you to give a 15-minute TED Talk-like presentation in which you talk about the wisdom of game theory as it applies to medical analysis on psychological well-being. Cool topic. And so his goal, hear this, was to not make sense, but to charm the living acceptance and that hallelujah in someone that goes into, wow, I'm in the company of a radical, poetic, sapio-eroticized savant. Okay, this is a true study. And he gave a 15-minute talk. They did a written study at the end on what they thought of his talk. It made no sense, purposely, and they got some of the most highest ratings ever of accolades by the leading intellectual, the psychological masters of consciousness. Oh, wow, if I had a chance to get a second PhD in this gentleman's subject, I would do it. They could not believe the results. They did it again. He even got greater accolades. Psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and those who were getting a doctorate degree in clinical psychology from leading universities at the time. That leaves the rest of us, called you and me, on how to figure out the truth of something. So the point here with the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha knew this kind of bias towards the predilection to what feels good without it being truthful. We call it, in modern day parlance, imposters, that knowingly or unknowingly appealed to the predilection of a psychological conditioning because they've understood how to adapt parental cultural conditioning to make unrecognizable amounts of money, because money is a priority over often integrity, where a lot of the thought leaders, spiritual teachers, and gurus throughout time and history are basically puppets of their conditioning, and by and large teach things that are basically false, that don't lead to the results based upon the need either to glorify self, egoic self-masturbation, and or the need to accumulate power, profit, and privilege. Welcome to America, right? What are you saying new? It's called the art of propaganda without even you knowing that you're using propaganda for your own fucking denied fear. Insecurity. Welcome to Mr. Biden's club. Welcome to Klaus Schwab's club. Welcome to Justin Trudeau's club. Back to Macron's club. Welcome to the global elites who want to take us down in the name of their satanic lies. Okay, that might be fierce, but it's not fierce enough. 1941, the brown shirts. What could we have done if we were at a table and we had a very clear friend at the table who turned out to be a brown shirt, and we had been on the right side of history for the last 3 years? We knew about Malone. We knew about Robert Kennedy. We all read the book, Robert Kennedy's book on the real Anthony Fauci. We knew about McCullough. Okay, we knew Ryan Cole. We knew the facts. We studied the research. We were part of the club that was vilified, marginalized, okay, excommunicated, censored, vilified by friends and family and culture, and by YouTube and by Facebook and by Instagram. We can't rant enough because we did not participate in the rise of the Fourth Reich. This is not theater. This is reality theater. But it's not theater. It's real politics today. Politics in the name of democracy that is a euphemism for technocratic, fascistic, dictatorial totalitarianism coming for you and coming for me. Your mind is fair grabbed today with artificial intelligence and misinformation and fucking lies. We cannot get crazy enough to throw off the shackles of being in that research like those psychiatrists and those psychologists and those PhDs. Who are we unless we protect our mind with every vessel of intelligence known throughout history, plus some, right? So the Buddha was said to have addressed this issue way back in the day. It's not new. It's not new. And he said, Mr. Kalama, you have every right to doubt. And in fact, that is the basis of sanity. That's so rad. That is the basis of freedom. That is the basis of skillfulness and what's been. If you're basically in a cult of denial and you feel that your anger, your judgment, your jealousy is a virtue, and you strike your child, your wife, your culture, you send out bombs to kill in your men to get oil from them and from Saudi Arabia in the name of profit and privilege and stock options, you're in denial, dude. You don't have skeptical doubt. You have no ethical self-restraint. You don't know that color, right? But Kalama, understand that you came to me and we're in dialogue. Freedom of speech. He empowered freedom of speech. Why are we having to stand up for freedom of speech in 2023 when it's inbuilt to the system of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Constitution, and all democratic mapping throughout history? Freedom of speech and freedom of expression, freedom of conscience is the bedrock of fucking civilized, sacred society. Where women know, let's talk about it. Dude, stop hitting me with your assholeness. Stop hitting me with your drones, with your bombs, with your loot fetishes. We can't get crazy enough. We're not crazy enough. The Buddha was saying to Kalama, you're not crazy enough with the beauty of fucking revolt, right? Of revolution, of angst, of craziness, of the virtue of madness. Go crazy on the stage of your own false certainty, Alan, my teachers would say in meditation. Believe nothing, feel everything, believe nothing, have no mind that you consider conclusive yet. Be a virgin and a pre-virgin in your innocence to discover the brand new radiance of a sacred peace inside of yourself that doesn't violate life in the name of your need. If only the politicians in the world would only see, what am I doing in the name of my need? And I call it, let's weaponize Ukraine and kill as many of those fucking Russians as humanly possible to make more loot in our defense industry. Fuck you, fucking American government. We can't get pissed off enough at you, right? That's despicable. That's satanic. And I'm not going to vilify you any more than you're vilifying yourself and your family and our government. But we have a right to be universal citizens. And as an American, we have a right to speak up, right? Revolution is in our blood. And I'm a peaceful activist, and I'm a theatrical activist. And basically, truth is not being weaponized by me, but by you. But it's not truth. Lies are being weaponized, and you're calling them truth. And you're making us criminals? No way, Jose. And so we can't get crazy enough, the Buddha said to the Kalama. However, it's not enough just to reject lies. That's a great sense of spiritual self-defense, but you want to like take it higher, right? I'm all into the psychedelic. I'm not into overcoming trauma. I'm so fucking traumatized. I love it. I love my fucking trauma, because I don't use the word trauma. I use it as a deliberate act of craziness in society that led me to be this revolutionary voice that's broken and whole, simultaneously flawed, like shrapnel in the mind of assholes. Be proud of your edginess. My teachers in Burma, but be proud of your edginess. Why is that so provocative? And the Buddha was said to have said in this Kalama Sutta, take it higher. How do you do that? Not only do you discern, do not believe a fucking thing, Kalama, just because it's been handed down and it's celebrated by bestsellers on Oprah. #1 Amazon rankings should be a way to turn away from it, unless it's Bobby Kennedy's book or Naomi Wolf's book or any of the great philosophical existential classics. Popularism is no measure of wisdom. the Buddha was said to have said. Just because you got large followings and you got sold out shows and you got sold out client bases and you make lots of money at the most popular retreat centers and you're just sold out and you're sold out, well, guess what? You're sold out. Generally speaking, those who are successful are SOLD, way out. No offense, but we are the minority today and become even a greater minority by overcoming our need for cultism. That's easier said than done, right? We all need to make a living, but not in a way that kills the future of freedom. So the Buddha was said to have said in this sutta, the way I interpret it, if it's in a sacred text, not necessarily true. Even if it appeals to your instincts and your reason and that deeper sense that we all have going all the time, you got to believe it if it's really felt deep inside, pre-intuitive. Any way to justify that sitcom actor just saying there's not one sentence in 15 minutes of my pre-TED talk that makes any sense. It was a deliberate neologism. It made no sense. And you're saying that I made sense? Guess what? Let's watch it back together. Here's a high dose of acid, ketamine, and psilocybin together. And there's not one thing in it that can be verified in science or history and psychology. It's a complete fabrication, purposely, dude. And you're going to hold me accountable for being a liar now that you were so taken in wanting to get a second PhD on my truth-telling? I'm just trying to expose to you, the Buddha said to the Kalama, that place in you that resonates with lies. Just look back at the next 3 years. Do we have it in us to have another 3 years, another pandemic, another post-Wuhan, another Chinese Communist Party that takes over the world? Next thing you know, up, censored, and I'm teaching censorship to all of the beloved freedom-loving people around the world. I am teaching the necessity through artificial intelligence of telling the truth. All the while, you'll never know that I was programmed by a prompt that says, tell a lie and call it truth. Welcome to 1984, but 1984 began long before 1984. There were a lot of truth tellers before Orwell. Okay, he was a white imperialist who was in Burma, the country where I was born spiritually. He lived in a prison camp by the British. And yeah, he had the good sense, like all of us, we woke up. My God, my country is obliterating this sovereign nation of incredible savants in the name of colonialism, called genocide of sovereignty. Let's call it by its real name, the Buddha said to Kalama. Don't be afraid to step out of sync with the edge that's considered normal. That means basically the more authentic and truth-bearing that one is, you run the risk of even being segregated, violated, racistly vilified, judged, blah, 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 blah. Look at the New York Times. Look at CNN. They are institutions of capital lies across the board. You just have to ask someone, where did you get your information from? I got it from the New York Times. Oh, I know where you stand, and there's no possibility of discussion, much less debate, right? You might as well say I got it from fucking Satan's journal. Call it like it is. There are places that empower truth, and there are places that empower lies for profit. New York Times, CNN, BBC, and lots of these other fucking anti-social medias are not places that empower the flourishing of our sacred constitution, stating things that are so obvious, but they're unfelt at the level of integrity, right? That's what we want to get in touch with. The Buddha was saying to Kala, you've got to get in touch with your discerning integrity. You've got to be willing to stand alone and discern. I refuse to participate in a conversation with a brown shirt. They're not listening, and I'm going to take my wine to another table and say, guess what? Namaste. I totally, thoroughly disagree with everything you stand for. But I'm not going to kill you, but you're going to want to kill me. The killing of truth right now is on the table. It's a slaughterhouse and getting worse by the second. Just read Twitter. The leading intellectuals are telling us freedom is under assault. In the election year in America, deplatforming Robert Kennedy Jr., everyone should listen to his epic 3-hour conversation with Mr. Joe Rogan that was just the other day. It should go viral around the world. It should be studied in classrooms and colleges. Listen to two men talking about freedom and truth-telling and moral courage, a Kalama Sutta in modern day, present time. So rad that this gentleman is running with a history of what he's had to deal with in our beloved world, not just America. Yes, there's hope, all of us, to rise up in radical truth-telling wisdom. So here I'm coming to the end. We'll open it up to questions. And so the Buddha was said to have said this whole litany of things, what not to believe. Then he said, Kalama, what to believe? What to believe? Who to believe? And how do we understand belief from prejudice, misinformation, predilection toward bias? How do I understand that what I'm empowering inside of myself is actually freedom rather than racism? How is it true love of liberty rather than xenophobia? How can it really be a so-called sacred universality of a felt reality rather than deep prejudice? Those are radical concerns, not just for the so-called scientific community, but in the spiritual, psychological sense. Hitler was able to inspire the leading intellectuals in German society to believe in the cult that led to a progressive tsunami of hell called the Holocaust. Whoa. To study the rise of the Third Reich and Nazism is to study the rise of global totalitarianism today at Mach speed, and I pray not with any outcome that we have had in history attributed to genocides and holocausts. The stakes are very high today. I saw it in Burma the last time I was there, pre-coup d'etat. I could feel it back in the 80s, in the 70s when I was there, prior to the 88 revolution. You can feel it, you can smell the rise of dictatorship. Comes in the odor of gleefully proud, uniformed, tuxedoed, profiting, measured men. But you know as well as I do, women know this very well, when you're on a moderate dose of truth and a high dose of reality and a micro dose of some form of psychedelic, you smell a fraud and imposter in a second. But it's so difficult to challenge and believe that energy. Why? Because the cost of walking on today and then and in the future is heavy. We're already dealing with epic, intrinsic loneliness by being estranged from a God that's aberrant in my book and very much at two with most culture. And even with lovers that you make love with, how easy it is to turn into what? And you go self-doubt, and then you marginalize self-doubt to belong. If I don't belong soon, I will die in fear, in loneliness, and in this isolated sense of, oh my God, who am I? Who am I? I'm not saying that's one of the best kept secrets in the world, but how to discern the truth of I am in integrity over complicity with denigration, lies, and collusion with evil, totalitarianism, and belonging to the cult of uniformity, orthodoxy, doctrines that in the medium run denigrate rather than elevate, the study of history, the study of consciousness, the study of psychology on the terms of what really frees rather than what temporarily eliminates the toxicity or the pus of inherent culturalisms that we live with. So these may sound like a lot of words, but I would put them on the palette of deep investigative study, because if we don't study the nature of language and consciousness that the Buddha outlined and many other people have outlined, we are going to be the victims of identifying places in consciousness falsely. No, that is not blue, Alan. That's not blue. You can call it what you want until you're blue in the sky, but it's not blue. You can make it blue. That's called arrogance. Or whatever you want to do, you can make it blue in the face. Okay, just hold your breath long enough and you're going to die of asphyxiation. You can call it blue until you want to take rebirth and rebirth and rebirth and rebirth and rebirth, rebirth again and again and again and again and again. And I won't even get into the dilemma of rebirth because consciousness doesn't shut off at night any more than when you die. It just simply, it's over. And if you want to think out of the box of predictive belief systems, the Buddha was said to have said. That's a deeper issue. So to conclude, how to trust, what to trust, how to discern what to trust, and how to live in a trustful wisdom with the evidence of that which leads to peace of mind, peace in society, peace in relationship, and the basic human right to happiness, security, safety, mutuality. And this whole talk for me is a rave, a rant, a prayer, a primal scream on the efficacy of disagreement as a love affair with freedom. And that's so hard to find disagreement in one's own inner mind. Because it's not admitting a fault or a shortcoming. It's like, I don't think I need to belong yet again to another cult of shamanism called, no offense to all you breath workers and all of you psychotherapists and all of you who vilify so-called and empower mental illness. The real illness are leaders in suits, primarily presidents, prime ministers, priests, popes, and pedophiles. It's called patriarchy. That's where we really need to examine and to consider these traumas and inabilities and wounds and struggles to be these absolute necessities. I am a seasoned veteran of the war on freedom, and I have earned the right to be a soldieress, a goddess warrior, unwilling to participate in the vocation of lies. I'm unwilling to participate in the vocation of lies. Make that your mantra, not Om Namah Shivaya. Come down off the pedestal of projecting into these ancient belief systems and empower the virtue of decent ecological wisdom, the ecology of one's own ethics, spiritual wisdom, existential intelligence, the beauty of felt reality on the terms of integrity, old-fashioned moral wisdom. The beauty of that. Radical discernment. So the Buddha was said to have said, okay, pay attention, Kalama, how to know the truth. Hard-earned experience. Naked, raw, felt, lived reality. Keeping in mind, Kalama, my friend, only through your own self-responsible discernment, critical analysis, mindful intelligence, moral compassing, radical courage to overcome cognitive bias, psychological predilections that culturally make sense, psychological so-called pseudo-wisdoms that are popular, and just because it's a bestseller on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or handed down throughout eternity as a biblical text, do not believe it just because it's been written or said and held by eloquent women and men. All that nonsense is not to be believed. Only through your hard-earned, radical, felt reality, Mr. Kalama, believe in natural, raw, lived experience by being aware of what brings that which is beneficial to you by thought, speech, and action. You feel it in your own inner being, a felt, discernible reality. You know it brings an inner smile of integrity, of peace, and trust. You know there's mutuality with you loving yourself. You know it's reverential. And even then, he said to the Kalama, keep on bringing in the skeptical doubt. As Elie Wiesel said, the great Nobel laureate, the Holocaust survivor, always associate with those who ask the question. Never believe anyone with a capital A absolute. There are no absolutes in an infinite universe of novelty. But the question If we kept alive the question, to paraphrase now, there would not have been a Holocaust. Everyone in Germany would have went, no, sir, the question is more important than collusion and complicity. Even when Hitler was going down in flames, many people who stood in solidarity with him, even in the big cities in Germany, to the very last minute refused to take down the evildoers' portraits in their homes, in their apartments, in their shops. So deep was the satanic collusion with evil, knowing that they were killing in mass. Are we headed in that direction? Ask someone in Yemen, 300,000 people right now, cannibalizing themselves from the greatest human crises in history, based upon my country's unbridled fetish for money, profit, privilege, and patriarchy, the pestilence of the planet. And we call it the need for oil. And we got so much fucking oil on American shores, and let's do the Saudi Arabian dance, called getting down on our knees and sucking oil dick. Despicable. How could these wives ever go down on these men ever again, even open their legs or their heart? Why don't they slap them silly, right? Jill, you're a doctor of psychology. Slap that fucking idiot husband of yours silly with truth. Save a Yemen, another Afghanistan, $7 trillion of our loot to kill. Saying fuck you is not even remotely polite enough to tell you, stop in the name of truth. Until enough of us throw off the brown shirt, get into moral courage, and as the Buddha said, and I stop here,